Carlo Ratti is originally from Italy. He's an architect and an engineer by training. He practices in Italy, where he has his own architecture firm, and he also teaches at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he directs the SENSEable City lab. He graduated from the Politecnico di Torino and the École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées in Paris, and he later earned his PhD at the University of Cambridge. He has exhibited the work of the SENSEable City Lab and his own work worldwide in places like the Venice Architecture Biennial, the Science Museum in London, or the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And I like to think of him as a hybrid. He's not your traditional architect. He mixes the worlds of architecture, technology, sensor technology, and engineering and future lifestyles, I would say, to analyze how we're going to be living in cities in the future. One of his big focuses is on technology and the digital world, but on focusing on how you can always need to bring the digital world back to realities, how the digital world by itself and cool technology is not enough. You need to make it tangible in the real world. I also hear that he's been named one of the 25 people who will change the world. So we're very interested to see how he's going to change the world in the next week here at the lab. And with that, please welcome Carlo Ratti.
Thank you, Maria. Good afternoon, everybody. I also want to introduce Dietmar Offenhuber, who's actually, maybe you can see here. We are going to do the presentation together. Dietmar is also at the SENSEable City Lab. We work together, and so we'll be both following the program this week. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Maria, Mara, all the team from the Guggenheim, because it has been really an incredible experience over the past year since we started, actually down there, like almost a year ago, thinking about the lab, and until now when it has happened. And well, today we start the kind of SENSEable City part of the program, and so I just wanted to share with you a little bit the vision we developed at the SENSEable City Lab at MIT. It's a group at MIT. We are around 30 people in Boston, 10 in Singapore, and then the design projects and the architecture projects are the ones that are done at the office that's in Italy and in Boston. So just in a couple of words, what our lab does. And I just wanted to start with a metaphor, and with a kind of a similar thing. If you look at this, something interesting happened in Formula One over the past 15, 20 years. 15, 20 years ago, if you actually wanted to win a race, you need a good car and a good driver. Today, if you want to win a race, you need that, but you also need something like this. Something like this, it's a system made of thousands and thousands of sensors onto the car, collecting information in real time from the car, sending information to those computers, and making decisions in real time. In other terms, that's what, as engineers, we call a real-time control system, which is basically a system made of two components, a sensing component, that you see there, and an actuating component. And sensing and actuating is really what we all do in our everyday life. Every dynamic system, every living system does sensing and actuating. When we meet each other, we sense each other, we touch each other, we shake hands, we look at each other, and then we respond to that. So sensing and actuating. Well, the amazing thing we believe at the lab is that today our cities are becoming a little bit like that Formula One racing car. Our cities have been covered, blanketed with many, many digital layers, with sensors, with networks, you name it, with all of those things that change our life over the past 20 years also have entered physical space. And because of that, the way we can collect information from cities, the way we can respond to that information, the way we interact with them is changing a lot, we believe. Almost as if every atom out there in the physical space were becoming both a sensor and an actuator. Now you might say all of this is fine, but where is all of this leading us? And we think it's doing something interesting. It's something that actually an exhibition at the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, recently started to explore. The title of the exhibition was Talk to Me. The idea that because of all of this, our environment is starting to talk back to us. You know, you can think about this whole struggle. The struggle goes back to Michelangelo. When Michelangelo sculpted the Mose, so the story goes, he took a hammer, he threw the hammer to the Mose, there's still a chip on the knee, and shouted, "Perché non parli?" Why don't you speak? And today, for the first time, our objects, our buildings, our cities are starting to speak back to us, to engage with us in a different way. And if you want, it's the old dream, the dream that starts with, think about Baroque architecture, think about Art Nouveau, think about liberty, think about all of that. It was actually trying to make dynamic things, but there was a tragedy there. All looked dynamic, but was actually frozen in steel, in glass, in bricks. And today, for the first time, we can actually do an architecture, an environment that actually is interfacing in a dynamic way with us, that's really alive. So, why do we focus on cities? Well, cities because we think are big issues on the planet. Just 4 numbers about cities: 2, 50, 75, 80. Cities are 2% of the surface of the planet, but 50% of the population, 75% of energy consumption, 80% of CO2 emissions. So if we can do something to make our cities work better, then that can be a big deal. Having said that, so we said this sensing and actuating. So we wanted to share with you some of the projects we've been doing at the lab in Boston, and some of these projects have actually inspired some of the things that will happen over the next week here at the Guggenheim Lab in Berlin. And the first project, I'll leave it to Dietmar to present, but it's a project that starts from this question: if you take this computer, today you know everything about this computer. Every chip in this computer, you know where it was produced, how it moved on the planet, how it became this machine. But actually, when you throw away this machine a few years from now, you know very little about it. So today we know where things come from, but we don't know where they go. And that's really the topic of today's presentation as well. But I'll leave it to Dietmar to present this project.
Okay, thanks, Carlo. Yeah. So this evening I'm going to talk about Trash Track and other projects. As today the first day of our program is under the topic of Sanitary Cities. We are talking about waste systems, about the metabolism of the city, how the city digests material and the waste it produces. And when we think about the waste system, it's very different compared to supply chains and all the other infrastructures that we have that are highly automated and that have all these sensors attached that we can use to get real-time information about where every single object is at the moment. But in a waste system, this does not exist, and both professionals in the waste industry, for them this kind of lack of information is also one of the major challenges, but also every citizen, every consumer has very little knowledge about where all the waste goes and what happens to all these products that they buy in the first place. So our approach in this project was to attach location sensors to individual items of trash, because what we have is some waste statistics about how much is collected and so on, but we have no information about how this waste moves actually through the whole system, which is global in some cases. So what we did, so those were some of the objects that we tracked, total number of 3,000 objects in Seattle. And this is what we got back from the sensors. Here we see, for example, the main landfills of Seattle that are in northwest Oregon. And we also have this number of really long traces that cover the whole country. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but you notice that they all are from electronic or household hazardous waste items. So it was really surprising for us to see how how these objects take very different trajectories, visit all kinds of facilities, end up sometimes in really weird places. Yeah, it's the Farewell Symphony. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to Carlo again.
Yeah. Well, you know, this was just one example of how we can collect information from things, from cities, in a different way. A bit like, you know, our inspiration was, you know, when you go to hospital, they put a tracer in your blood and they follow it through your body. How you could do the same thing in the scale of a city. Now, what did we learn from this? Now, the first thing you learn as an engineer, you can take this information and actually make the city more efficient. The second thing we were very interested in is actually how information, this incredible amount of information we have today. You know, if you take all the information produced by humanity since the beginning till 2003, well, that amount of information now we produce every 1 day to 2 days. Now, so this incredible amount of information, how this can promote behavioral change. The only reason really the only way we can actually tackle some of the big issues we'll face tomorrow, think about climate change or CO2 emissions, is if we actually change our behavior. And here one of the most telling thing was at the end of the project, somebody who said, you know, I used to drink water in plastic bottles every day and put them outside my door and think it would disappear. Now, after the project, I know that's not the case. They don't disappear, but actually just go a few miles from home, they stay there forever. And because of this, I stopped actually drinking water in plastic bottles. Now, there's a third thing we learned that was actually unexpected, and that was actually more recently, or just a few months ago, but I'll show it to you. And that happened when actually a burglar came to our lab at MIT and stole a lot of stuff, including some of the tags that tell you where they go. And here is what happened. So, well, you know, much more on trash track and waste today in the program today, but we'll see that in a moment. I just want to share with you, you know, this amount of information, then it's incredible, generated in cities. What we're doing in Singapore is actually collecting many different types of information. Like imagine a living city where you know in real time all what's happening. It's about information about in real time activities in the city, collected from the different telecommunication networks. It's about energy consumption and temperature increase. The two are correlated in Singapore. It gets very hot, and then you turn on the air conditioner. What happens in the city during special events? How the city changes? In this case, because of the Formula 1 Grand Prix. Even simple things like, you know, when you have information about all the taxis and rain, you know, when you combine unexpected data sets, that became a very interesting tool for both taxi drivers and for people waiting for a taxi when it's raining, or how the city expands and shrinks during the day because of traffic, as you just saw. And then all of the local flows, but all the global flows. So people coming in to the airport, going out of the airport, and containers coming in and out. So the idea that the amount of information we collect from our cities is growing exponentially, and that allows us to see them with different eyes than we could have just a few years ago. But that's all about sensing, just to give you a sense. But the question is, in the end, like in a Formula One, the big thing is actuating. So what is then, how does the system respond? As in Formula One, the goal is to win the race. So what is the equivalent at the scale of the city? And in some cases, just giving information back to people is a way to actuate the system, to promote change. So in this case, for instance, we've been working with Paris. And what you see here is actually Paris, in terms of travel time, if you go by bicycle, or if you go by metro, or if you go by car. Now, that's the size of the city in terms of travel time. But actually, if you look at carbon footprint, this is travel time. And if you look at carbon footprint, it's difficult because I don't see what's being shown. But if you look at carbon footprint, that's the opposite, exactly opposite size. So our idea was, well, what if we could actually monitor that and actually give people this information? So that's the idea, CO2Go. So over 1/3 of global CO2 emissions actually are generated by transportation. And then how can we give this feedback back to people, eventually promoting behavioral change? And here the idea was, well, most of us today have a smartphone in our pockets. And it's almost like, that makes us almost like walking sensors. In a smartphone, we have GPS, accelerometer, internet, microphone. And so look at how the smartphone sees you when it's in your pocket. That's the smartphone, the accelerometer, and how it sees you when you're actually on a bus, walking, biking, or in the metro. You could see here horseback riding, you see the trotting or galloping. It's all of the frequencies that you generate. And so using all of this, then what you can do is automatically see the mode of transportation. At the end of the day, get CO2 emitted, get calorie burned, and perhaps this information can promote behavioral change. So this will soon be an app that will be publicly released. At the same time, that's kind of actuating by looking at people and by using information to close the loop. At the same time, architecture and planning have been the most traditional ways to close the loop, to actually to change our environment. And in this project, this is a project we did for the World Expo in Zaragoza. And the theme of the expo was water. And the mayor came to us before the expo with a very precise question. Water has been a beautiful ingredient of architecture and planning for many, many centuries. How today can we actually use water in a different way using technology? And one idea that came was, imagine you have a pipe and you got many, many solenoid valves opening and closing in real time. Then you can create a water curtain that's like a living wall. You can write on it, you can show images, patterns, and other things. When you approach it, you can jump through it, and it responds to you and opens up. So we got the commission to design the building at the entrance of the expo, called Digital Water Pavilion. The whole building is made of water. Then when you approach it, it opens up to let you in. When you go inside, all of the walls actually expand and shrink based on people. You got more people or less people. The roof is also covered with a thin layer of water. Then, if you get too much wind, like today, you can actually lower the roof to minimize splashing. Or at the end of the day, you can close the building and the whole architecture disappears. Hopefully without anybody underneath. Here you can see the building before the opening. You see this guy was very puzzled about what was happening. Here you can see the physical pixels, the pixels made of water, and digital pixel projector on the top of it, the two things. Here it was myself trying not to get wet. And I should tell you now what happened one night when all of the sensors that control the building stopped working. All the sensors are connected to a computer. Like here, the computer crashed, and the building kept on doing its own things, crazy things, cuts and holes and images, but stopped responding to people. So we were terrified, but actually that night turned out to be one of the most fun nights ever, with all the kids from Zaragoza coming, thousands and thousands, coming to the building to play a new game. Not anymore a building that responds to you, but a building where... That for us was telling, because as architects, as engineers, we always think we know how people will use the things we design. But then reality, and especially human reality, and when we have dynamic, interactive things, then it's always a surprise. In this case, it was a good surprise. I wanted to finish with two things, by taking one project and showing to you a bit more in detail one project and how it developed, to show you how we believe the way of processing and designing is changing, with many disciplines coming together, many people working together, not anymore the old idea of just one architect on his own. The project I wanted to share with you is started as well at, with a workshop at MIT. It's called the Copenhagen Wheel. It started from the question from the mayor of Copenhagen. Mayor of Copenhagen, who came to us before the 2009 World Climate Summit, and saying, you know, all of these technologies, ubiquitous computing and smart city technologies, how can we use them for traffic in the city? Now, the incredible thing in Copenhagen is that if you think about traffic, that's what it looks like. Copenhagen is a city where you had a lot of cars in the city center a few decades ago, but where today you actually have a lot of bicycles. So we started working on bicycles, and we came up with this idea.
Welcome to the Copenhagen Wheel. The wheel that turns your ordinary bike into a smart electric hybrid. Quickly and easily, with no additional batteries or wires. The Copenhagen Wheel allows you to capture the energy dissipated while braking and cycling, and save it for when you need a bit of a boost. Controlled through your smartphone, the Copenhagen Wheel becomes a natural extension of your everyday life. The Copenhagen Wheel is your personal trainer, sensing your effort level and providing you with real-time feedback about your fitness and exercise goals. The Copenhagen Wheel also enhances your experience of the city. It connects you with things a cyclist wants to know: upcoming traffic congestion, road conditions, and pollution levels. Choose to keep your data, or share it with your friends and other cyclists through social networks like Facebook. As you ride, you also collect green miles. It's similar to a frequent flyer program, but good for the environment. Elegant, responsive, smart. A new mode of transport for a rapidly changing world. So turn on your life and turn on the city. The Copenhagen Wheel.
And briefly, I want to share with you how this was developed, and this idea of how the way of designing really is getting much more collaborative. And that's also what we'll try to explore a little bit in the workshop during this week. So again, it started with many ideas developed in the lab, in a workshop. And one of the ideas was this kind of funny wheel that actually, in the initial sketch, could do something, could get your energy and give it back to you. But as you see here, there was very little in it. There was, just basically a concept, but no technical details, nothing at all. So, like all the times when you got an idea and you don't know if it works or not, the best thing is, let's try it out. So here you see the first sketch, laser cutting some of the pieces, producing a model, the batteries, combining everything together. And here we have the first one. Not too sexy, but it was working. And here it's with the mayor of Copenhagen, the first meeting. She liked it. She said, okay, why don't we go ahead? So again, from an initial idea, let's back to the drawing board, back to actually try to develop it further, try to understand what really we wanted to do, a kind of new brief, like here, new design, putting together all the pieces, selecting the model, combining all the elements, fitting everything together, and then how to connect the wheel itself with the rim. Well, this was the initial idea. Looked pretty ugly, as you can see. Then there was another idea that looked better, like this, but actually didn't work. You can imagine here, if you actually put a torque, the torque doesn't transmit from the center, doesn't go from the center to the rim. And there was this idea of having a rim and then having spokes that simply touch the hub and then connect to it. So basically, just in tension, they're not connected, they simply touch it in tension and then turn and connect back. In this case, some people thought it would work, some people thought it wouldn't work. Again, the best way to do it, to test it, is to do it, to try doing a prototype. So here you can see the first one made of cardboard. It's very easy with 3D printers. We've done a lot over the past few weeks here in Berlin, really playing with fast prototyping. Then another one made of plastic. then putting the spokes, bending them. You saw he was very skeptical in his face, but actually in the end it was working. So that's how the spokes became at the end. And then there was all the control from the phone and programming this. This was with a kind of interface design. I'll go quite fast also given the signs we're getting from the outside. So, but then, and then we wanted to add the sensing about air quality and so on. And people today do sensing actually on bicycles, but that's what you get. So in our case, we wanted to just get small sensors inside and measure CO exposure, NOx, noise, distance travel. And the incredible thing is if you just get a few bikes in the city, then in a few hours you map most of the city, like you see here. Today if you measure pollution in a big city, you got a few measurement points. The measurement points can be not very well calibrated, and you only have information here and there. And actually, it might happen like it happened in Madrid just a few years ago, where the mayor was boasting, saying that air quality was getting better and better, till when people discovered that he was just moving measuring stations more and more inside the parks. So in this case, actually, what you saw here was just with a few bikes, you get a full map of the city very, very quickly. That really tells you exposure to everybody who's cycling, as you see here. And then, well, after having designed all of this, it was about doing the prototypes for the summit, the initial prototypes, programming them, putting the microchips, preparing them, shipping them to Copenhagen, and then presenting there. That's mayor, and here's actually the mayor of Copenhagen and the mayor of Toronto testing them for the first time. All right, so I'll stop it here. I'll stop it here just to give you a sense about this sensing and actuating, how really we think the way we design today is changing, the way we can solve, the only way we can tackle today's major challenges if we really work together from many disciplines and try to look at them from different angles.